Fear doesn't need to destroy your life to control it. It just needs to make you hesitate, make you doubt, make you stay where you are, make you avoid the things God is calling you to do. That's how fear works. It doesn't always scream. Sometimes it's whisper. What if I fail? What if things didn't work out? What if you're not good enough? What if things goes wrong? And before you know it, you spent months or even years living inside possibilities that never even happened. The truth is, many people aren't being held back by lack of opportunities. They are being held back by fear. And if you don't learn how to overcome fear, it will quietly shape your decisions, your future, and your relationship with God. The biggest mistake people make is believing that courage means feeling no fear. That's not true. Some of the most courageous people in the Bible felt fear. The difference is they didn't let fear make their decisions. Fear is a terrible leader because fear always focuses on what could go wrong. It magnifies obstacles, it exaggerates risk, it creates worst case scenarios. And if you follow fear long enough, you spend your life running from things God wanted you to face. Faith doesn't mean fear disappears. Faith means fear stops being in charge. When Jesus called Peter out onto the water, Peter did something impossible. He stepped out of the boat. Think about that. The miracle didn't start when Peter felt comfortable. The miracle started when Peter moved despite the uncertainty. As long as Peter focused on Jesus, he kept moving. But the moment he focused on the wind and waves, fear took over. And that's exactly what happened to us. When we focus only on problem, fear grows. When we focus only on obstacle, fear grows. When we focus only on what might go wrong, fear grows. Whatever you focus on expands. Fear is usually about something that hasn't happened yet. You're afraid of failing, afraid of rejection, afraid of disappointment, afraid of losing something, afraid of what might happen next. But notice the pattern. Most fear isn't about the present moment, it's about the future. Your mind keeps running ahead, creating scenarios that don't exist yet. And while you are busy fighting imaginary battles, you are losing today's peace. Faith brings you back to reality. Faith says, I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know who holds tomorrow. Everybody remember David defeating Goliath. But before David ever picked up his stone, everyone else was already defeated mentally. The giant showed up and fear spread through the camp. The giant was real. The danger was real. The challenge was real. But David saw something others didn't. While everyone else was measuring the size of the giant, David was measuring the size of God. The problem wasn't that others saw Goliath. The problem was that Goliath became bigger than God in their mind. And fear always grows when your problem becomes bigger than the perspective of your God. Let's clear something up. Faith is not pretending that problem doesn't exist. Faith is not denying reality. Faith is not saying everything is easy when it isn't. David saw the giants. Moses saw the Red Sea. Joshua saw the walls of Jericho. The disciples saw the storm. Faith doesn't ignore obstacles. Faith simply believes obstacles are not bigger than God. And that is the difference. Fear feels powerful because it speaks quickly. Faith often speaks quietly. Fear gives immediate reasons to quit. Faith requires trust. Fear wants certainty before action. Faith moves before all the answers arrive. That's why fear often feels stronger, because it's louder, more emotional, more urgent. But just because fear is loud doesn't mean it's right. Think about how often people rehearse their fears. They imagine failure repeatedly, replay negative possibilities, think about worst case scenarios, analyze every risk. Eventually, those thoughts become stronger than reality. What you repeatedly think about becomes more believable. That's why feeding fear makes fear stronger. But the opposite is also true. Feed your faith and faith grows. The battle is often won or lost in what you consistently allow into your mind. When Moses died, Joshua had a huge responsibility. Lead an entire nation, step into numerous shoes, face uncertainty, face oppositions, face challenges. And what was one of the main things God repeatedly told him? Be strong and courageous. Why? Because courage isn't automatic. Even people chosen by God face fear. The presence of fear doesn't mean you're qualified. It means you're a human. The question is whether you obey fear or obey God. One of fear's favorite tactics is paralysis. It convinces you to wait forever. Wait until you're ready. Wait until you're confident. Wait until you have every answer. Wait until there is no risk. The problem is that day never comes. Nobody ever feels completely ready. Nobody ever has every answer. Nobody ever eliminates uncertainty. If you wait until fear disappears before taking action, you may wait your entire life. Faith isn't a feeling, it's a decision. It's choosing to move forward when fear says stay still. It's choosing to trust when uncertainty remains. It's choosing obedience over comfort. It's choosing God's promise over your worries. And often, faith starts with a single step, not 10 steps, not the entire journey, just the next step. And that's how most miracle begins. Maybe fear has been controlling more of your life than you would like to admit. Maybe it's keeping you from pursuing something. Maybe it's keeping you stuck from overthinking. Maybe it's keeping you from trusting God fully. Hear this. Fear is not a prophecy. Just because you're afraid something will happen doesn't mean it will. Just because fear is speaking doesn't mean you have to listen. Some of the best decisions you ever make will happen while you're still nervous. Imagine if David listened to fear. Imagine if Peter stayed in the boat. Imagine if Joshua refused to lead. Imagine if Moses turned around at the Red Sea. Fear would have kept them from seeing what God could do. Fear doesn't just steal peace, it steals possibility, it steals growth, it steals opportunity to see God's work. So how do you overcome fear with faith? You stop waiting for fear to disappear. You start trusting God more than you trust your fears. You stop focusing only on what could go wrong and start remembering who God is. Because fear says, what if all fall apart? Faith says, what if God is already making a way? Fear focuses on obstacles, faith focuses on God. And when your view of God becomes bigger than your view of your problems, something changes, not necessarily around you, but within you. And that's where real courage begins.